Okay, so why don't we get started, everyone? So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks so much for finding the time to be with us here today. It's a great day at SOA Software. My name is Simon Barrere, Director of Technology here at SOA Software, based out of Los Angeles, our headquarters. And I want to talk with you today about a very exciting topic. The webinar is entitled Realizing SOA and API Convergence for IBM DataPower Customers. And we're going to go into some nice detail about the convergence of SOA and API technology, why it's such an important topic, what it means for IBM customers and especially DataPower customers, and what you can do to realize and achieve convergence of SOA and API technology into the future. So we have about an hour to go through a very important topic, and we're very excited about presenting this information to you. As we go through today's hour, just a couple of quick notes. If you could please mute your line as we go through this, that will create a nice environment for everyone with no background noise. At the same time, let's also keep things interactive. So anytime during the presentation, if you have any thoughts or questions, please just blurt it out and obviously unmute your line, and we'll have a great conversation. You can also use the WebEx chat. So hopefully everyone's dialed into the WebEx, and you can actually see my screen, which should have the opening page of a slide deck. And in that WebEx, there's a chat window where you can raise questions. You can direct a question to myself, Simon Barrere, or to everyone, whatever you choose. But essentially, you can just ask questions, and we will take them as they come. So with that, why don't we dive in and talk a little bit about today's agenda, and then we'll actually dive into the content. So agenda-wise, we're going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about SOA Software, who we are, what we do, and then we're going to go through a couple of slides on what API and SOA convergence is and how you realize convergence on the IBM platform using DataPower. But then the bulk of today is actually going to be a live demo where we show real working code. So we're actually going to show you some real convergence use cases in action for some very sophisticated things that we're going to do, and then we'll close things out with Q&A. And answer all your questions and any closing thoughts or comments, okay? So that's essentially our agenda for today's webinar. So why don't we dive in and just talk quickly about SOA Software. So SOA Software is an enterprise software company, again, based out of Los Angeles. We are a IBM business partner. We do a lot of great work with IBM and with the IBM customer base. We actually have a very long history of providing API and SOA solutions within IBM enterprise environments. We work with a lot of sophisticated IBM scenarios. We work with products like WebSphere DataPower, which is going to play a key role in today's session. We also work with products like IBM Integration Bus, WebSphere MQ, a lot of integration work with System Z mainframes and so on. So we do a lot of great work helping IBM customers to realize the very best of API and SOA in their environments. And one of the things that we offer that's very unique to SOA Software is a unified API and SOA platform. So we can offer a single platform for both API and SOA that includes full lifecycle management and integrated runtime support, so that you know that from soup to nuts, you're going to be able to plan and design and build and run and share all of your services in a very seamless way, very fully automated way. So a very, very nice solution. And you're going to learn a lot about that today in terms of what we bring to the table and how we can help you in your environment. So that gives you just a quick idea about SOA Software. One other quick note about us is just wanted to mention that in 2013, Gartner gave us very nice recognition for the hard work that we do in the API and SOA space. Gartner gave us the best vision for API management and best vision for SOA governance in a analysis and paper called Application Services Governance, which is Gartner's sort of terminology for the convergence of API and SOA technology into the future. So we're very happy with that outcome from Gartner. It represents the outcome of a lot of years of very hard work and a lot of thinking about what makes sense for customers out there who are trying to tackle the challenges in their environments for both SOA and API. So we were definitely very happy with Gartner's announcement there. And just another quick note before we dive into convergence, there are some good resources that you can pursue after today's session. We have a really nice white paper, SOA and API convergence, what it means for IBM customers. You can think of that as a companion piece to today's webinar. You can see the bit.ly link there, links to an SOA.com page where you can download that white paper. We also have a great webinar for DataPower called Turbocharge DataPower to Reach Your SOA Goals. You can also see the bit.ly link there as well. That's an earlier webinar that we put out that goes into a lot of great detail about some of the work that we do on DataPower, especially from an SOA standpoint. So today we're talking about SOA, API, and Convergence, but that webinar did a nice job of talking about SOA. So definitely do check that out. I think that's about an hour long as well, and it'll give you a lot of great ideas about what we can do for you and in your DataPower environments for SOA. A couple of other resources. We have another nice webinar, API and SOA, two sides of the same coin. Another bit.ly link over there that you can go to view that recorded webinar, and yet another one, our APIs and SOA converging, and you can see the bit.ly link down there as well. So a lot of great content at SOA.com talking about convergence and talking about what's important for you moving into the future. So definitely recommend that after today's webinar, you check out all this material, and you can learn a lot from a lot of the stuff that we've put out in the past. Okay? So with that, why don't we dive in, and I wanted to share with you just a couple of slides and ideas about API and SOA and convergence, and kind of level set with you how we think about it and why we feel that it's so important and why it's so important to start thinking about this in your own environments. So I think most of you, if not all of you, are aware of SOA and API. Many of you are even going through initiatives for SOA and API, or maybe you've been doing it for years. So I think that there's some good sort of ideas among the industry overall about what these technologies are. This slide talks a little bit about some of the key attributes of SOA technology and API technology. On the left-hand side here in blue, you can see some of the key attributes for SOA, things like a focus on internal use and business partner use. There's a lot of strictness to SOA. It really wants to get things right in terms of data models and interfaces and procedures and processes. Also works with a lot of key technology like SOAP and W-Security and SAML and so on. So SOA has a lot of very important attributes, and these attributes have been used by a lot of folks. I'm sure many of you already have successes within the SOA space in a way that you can take your existing environments that are very, very rich and robust and turn those into an environment that's very service-oriented, where you can expose all of your different resources using all that technology that you use inside the data center. If we switch over to API technology, which you see there in green on the right, you can see some of the key attributes of API technology. So whereas SOA is typically internal, API is typically external. It doesn't have to be, but that's definitely a huge use case for API. Things like structure and definition is still sort of being worked out. Process and procedure is not always the centerpiece. It's often about just quickly getting things out in order to drive business initiatives. It's often very externally hosted in order to support a lot of those external use cases. And it uses different types of technology as SOA, things like REST and basic auth, OAuth, and JSON technology, and so on. So a lot of very important attributes for API. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the key things that you would attach to API technology and SOA technology. But the question is what the heck does that have to do with convergence? So what? So SOA has a bunch of attributes, API has a bunch of attributes. What does that all mean in the big picture? You can see on this slide what that means and why it's so important. If you kind of summarize what you think about when you think about API and think about SOA, when it comes to API, you think a lot about consumption. Really what's the name of the game for API is the ability to make your enterprise data very easily consumable to a very large community. And this could be web-based applications, this could be mobile apps, these could be mobile developers, these could be very large types of solutions that folks are building, or very small solutions. They could be solutions that are directly tied to your organization, or they can be entirely external or a third party to your organization. But the name of the game is consumption. How do you very easily announce to the world that you have a bunch of very useful enterprise data, and that it's very easy for folks to consume, and that you want to give access to the right folks so that they can actually consume it and do a great job of making your data available to whoever it may be, typically end customers and consumers of your business, but it could be essentially for any use that's important. Okay, so consumption is the name of the game for API. How about SOA? What does this mean for SOA, and why is SOA in the picture at all? Well, when you think about SOA, SOA technology focuses on the production of enterprise resources. So you have these very typically large and complex IBM backends, lots of MQ messaging and Web3 application server, lots of mainframe programs and other important things in the back end. The question is how do you actually take all that data and produce it in a way that it's available for consumption? And again, you can see some of the bullet points here of what's so important for SOA. A lot of enterprise level things, integration and security, standardization, the ability to drive a service lifecycle across many different groups and organizations, IT reuse has always been a cornerstone of SOA technology. Reliability and the ability to have a highly available data center that can actually support whatever traffic loads are needed any time of the day, any day of the week, any time of the year. So SOA has that very, very important focus around production. And the key piece here is that, you really can't have consumption without production. And in many respects, you can't really have production without consumption. And so that's why we think of the two as two sides of the same coin, right? If you have a great way to make everyone aware of all the great data that you have, but you can't actually make that data available, then trying to make it available for consumption is really not going to work out very well. So definitely the production side is so important. On the flip side, if you're able to have a really nice, well-organized environment that can very easily make all this data available for consumption, but you have no tools to actually get people to realize that the data is available and to understand how to actually consume it, then all of that is for naught, okay? So when we think about API and SOA, we think about it in terms of consumption and production, and we think about it in a way that if you don't have both together, you're going to run into trouble. So the question is if you only spend a lot of your time today coming out with API-based solutions, are you going to be okay? Is that acceptable? And the answer is not really. You're going to run into a lot of problems. Perhaps up front in your initial implementations and initiatives, you're going to be able to make some headway. You're going to be able to build some community of mobile developers and cloud developers and internal web developers and business partners, and you're going to be able to make some progress. But over time, if your goal is to take all of your enterprise data that needs to be exposed and get it out there, you're talking about a massive effort. And if you don't have the right tools, if you don't have a proper SOA in place to actually do that, you're definitely going to run into a lot of very strategic issues that's going to stop you from reaching all the goals that you need to reach, okay? So that gives you some ideas about what we mean when we talk about convergence. And from our standpoint, it's inevitable that API and SOA will converge into the future. So that begs the question, what model should you follow to ensure that as API and SOA converge more and more into the future, you're going to be able to take advantage of it. And that's exactly what the next couple of slides are about. We talk about, in the white paper that I mentioned earlier, 3 different models of convergence. We talk about Model A, Model B, and Model C. And you can see Model A and B on this slide over here. In Model A, essentially we keep consumption and production separate, and they sort of grow over time independently. And where there are associations across them, we have just a bit of ad hoc integration across the two, okay? So essentially independent growth of both consumption and production with whatever ad hoc tooling is needed to make the two work, okay? From a convergence Model B standpoint, we have consumption and production where consumption grows over time. So you're spending a lot of time making the whole world aware of all the great data that you have, but you're not investing in production, and production is shrinking. So you're not ensuring that as all the new data and applications that come out internally come out, that you don't have a real program in place to make sure that those are all done according to standards and in a way that's very easily consumable by whoever needs to consume it, okay? So that's Model A and Model B, and both Model A and Model B have some significant risks associated with them, right? So you can kind of see a listing out here of some of the key risks. You have a lot of, with Model A, you have a lot of cost and overlap and confusion trying to run multiple solutions and multiple runtime gateways at the same time. You essentially have 2 different solutions that you need to kind of manage separately, but they have pieces that are in common, and you try and figure out how to make that work. You have a lot of trouble with that. You also tend to lose either consumption capabilities or production capabilities. So one way or another, you don't have all the functionality you need to both get this data out there and also make it very easy for folks to consume so that you can properly market that data and make sure that it's satisfying all the different needs of the business, okay? Of course, with Model A, if you look at the 3rd bullet in the middle here, slow, ongoing, and expensive ad hoc integrations. So you definitely don't want to be in a situation where every time some new functionality is needed, you need to spin up a new project that takes into account what kind of stuff you're trying to get from your back end, what kind of stuff you're trying to get out to your consumers, how you can make those pieces work together. So definitely that's not something that you're going to want to deal with every time you have new functionality into the future, okay? And perhaps one last piece here is lack of access to critical back-end enterprise data. Sort of talked about that earlier. Supposing you spend a lot of time making sure that all of your data is available through APIs out on the cloud, out to mobile, but it doesn't actually interconnect. You're having such a hard time getting to that data and making it available to these folks. Essentially, they're going to lack the data they need. They won't be able to build the next generation apps that they need. They won't be able to build the next generation digital marketing channels that are needed to make your organization the top tier in your space. So you're going to run into a lot of issues there as well. So definitely A and B are big issues. But that begs the question, what type of a convergence model does work? What kind of a convergence model will give you everything that you need to ensure that you have the functionality into the future? And that brings us to the Model C. So you can see what Model C looks like over here, and this is a true convergence model. You can see on the left-hand side that we're talking about consumption and production together. Production might be a little bit bigger today because that's you guys have typically been spending more of your time on production in the past. Consumption is a bit of a new topic around API, but essentially you have production and consumption, and they are together, okay? Two sides of the same coin. Blue and green are overlapping. And then as consumption and production grow, the overlap gets greater and greater. Okay, so as you have great new features and capabilities for consumption, you also have it for production. The two match each other directly because you have a unified solution. And you can see what this leads to over the long term in red. You can see you have a single unified consumption and production story where everything you're doing on production can be mapped to consumption. Everything you're doing on consumption can be mapped to production, and you're able to solve all your critical issues, both from an IT standpoint and from a business standpoint. So essentially, Convergence Model C is the model that you guys want to think about into the future as you think about making progress in both your API environment and your SOA environment and program. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense in terms of convergence. Any thoughts or questions on that so far in terms of everything we said about convergence and different models? Okay, great. So let's keep on going. So now that you understand what convergence is all about, why it's so important, and some different models of pursuing it, it begs the question, how can you actually realize Convergence Model C? So glad you asked. And this is a key part of today's topic because we're talking about how you can use IBM DataPower in order to enable SOA and API convergence into the future. And you can do this through a partnership with SOA Software where we can actually bring out the right level of features in a fully unified solution for both SOA and API. You can kind of see what we're doing here on this slide. We have a variety of different key functional areas. On the bottom, you can see their lifecycle management and our lifecycle manager product. You can also see the runtime aspect from a gateway standpoint. We talk about gateway services and service integration. And from a analytics and developer engagement and the ability to market and publish and make available to a large community all of your different APIs, we have Community Manager. So essentially, all of these products work together in one single unified solution to give you everything that you need from both an SOA services standpoint and an API standpoint, and both a production standpoint and a consumption standpoint. So essentially, this is our recommendation. This is our proposal to you in terms of how you can bring API and SOA convergence to your IBM environment and how you can leverage DataPower to do that. And we're actually going to see some real working code a little bit later on how DataPower is actually going to enable this type of functionality out in your environment. Okay? To give you an idea of the different roles here, pretty much went through this on the last slide, but you can see kind of in different guise the different features that are brought to the table. So again, Lifecycle Manager, Community Manager, also Policy Manager for DataPower, and DataPower coming together to offer this fully unified solution. You can see on the bottom the key things that DataPower brings to the table. DataPower is an extremely powerful appliance, and it's very well suited for both API and SOA workloads, right? It's also very well suited for leveraging the entire enterprise platform. It has amazing integration with so many different IBM products and platforms, and it also allows you to work with the infrastructure that you have today. So if you're an existing DataPower customer and you have a very large, nice environment that you've made a lot of great progress on, then keep it. Keep working with that environment. Add this great SOA and API features to that environment, but still leverage all the power of the DataPower platform without having to worry about adopting some other gateway platform out there just to run your APIs or just to do something else. You want a unified platform, and IBM DataPower can give that to you. IBM DataPower can give you all the features you want to do all of your API use cases and all of your SOA use cases, all of your security use cases, mediation use cases, your ESB and your security gateway use cases. All the things that you need to do can be done on DataPower, and that's why we like using DataPower so much when we talk about this fully managed, full lifecycle solution utilizing products like Lifecycle Manager, Community Manager, and Policy Manager for DataPower. Okay? Perhaps one last slide, and we will take a look at our actual demo. And this is kind of a bit of an architecture diagram that shows you what your environment could look like with this partnership between SOA Software and IBM WebSphere DataPower. You can see, of course, in the center of all this is DataPower. DataPower is providing that key runtime infrastructure, that key API and SOA gateway. It's going to give you all the features you need to run your entire business. And you can see what the backend looks like there. You have IBM mainframes, you have IBM integration bus, WebSphere application server, you also have WebSphere and a whole host of IBM products. You may have non-IBM things here as well. You may have a wide array of different backend systems. DataPower can handle all of that and more. So your backend is very, very rich and fully managed by SOA Software and DataPower. And you can see what's actually running in DataPower. We have some SOAP services that are used for trading partners. We have some internal services that are used for, let's say, portals and internal web applications and call centers and whoever that may be. But we also have in the bottom left there mobile APIs. So this is the key part where DataPower is offering you the best of all worlds. With mobile APIs, you can see that on the left there you have iPhone and Windows and Android that are all taking advantage of DataPower and this rich enterprise integration with your backend in order that your mobile users can have the same great experience as your internal staff and your trading partners and everyone else who's using all this great, rich enterprise data. And of course, in red, you can see how SOA Software is managing this picture. At the top, you have service lifecycle management through Lifecycle Manager. So we are giving you the tools to control and manage and drive the full lifecycle of your SOA services and your API services from start all the way to finish. And it's in a fully automated environment, an extremely robust environment where you can define exactly what your service lifecycle needs to be, who needs to be involved in that service lifecycle, what are all the key decision points and the key gating points. So that lifecycle is definitely a very key aspect of this whole picture. But you can also see right under Lifecycle Manager, Policy Manager offering that runtime registry support. That's giving you everything you need to make sure that DataPower has the correct model and you have a fully automated experience where you can come out with hundreds or even thousands of different APIs and SOA services, and they can all automatically be deployed and run on DataPower. And then finally, you can see on the bottom, Community Manager, giving you an API developer portal, and that's how you're going to actually build a community of app developers, mobile app developers, and API developers who can get together and they can share, and the developers can help each other to learn how to use all this rich enterprise data, figure out the right protocols and technologies, and deal with legal issues and documentation, everything that's needed essentially in order to run a full community. But that full community is fully integrated with everything else. So it fully runs on top of DataPower, fully leverages the lifecycle of your services. So all told, this hopefully to you is a very, very attractive picture, very, very nice picture of how things could look in the future and how you can make progress on all aspects of SOA and API in one single fully unified solution that has DataPower at its core, offering you those runtime services, offering you that very powerful security gateway, API, SOA gateway in order to run all of your business transactions. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to share in terms of the backdrop for Convergence, and we're going to move into a demo and actually show you some real working code. Before we do that, any thoughts or questions on anything that we've gone over so far? In terms of DataPower and Convergence and being able to come out with a solution that anticipates the needs of API and SOA convergence?
Simon, there's 2 questions on chat for you.
Yes, I do see that. So let me actually address the questions in the chat. The first question is the runtime registry in the slide same as WSRR? It's a great question. That's a question about the WebSphere Service Registry and Repository product. So it's not the same. If you take a look at the total picture, there is some functionality scattered, for example, in the current picture that we're looking at here that's related to WSRR. WSRR will give you some lifecycle features around your APIs and the ability to come out with a service catalog. But no, I would say that the slide that you see here is not one and the same as WSRR. Next question is what does Integration Bus offer in terms of integration patterns, volume, speed, et cetera? So one of the patterns that we see with Integration Bus is a lot of customers like to have DataPower in front of Integration Bus having a lot of the very robust and very sophisticated flows that are used to integrate with a larger organization. Could be WebSphere MQ, could be WebSphere Application Server, and so on. And DataPower provides that very high-speed security gateway and offers a lot of that API and SOA functionality. So just to throw out one idea there, DataPower can very nicely limit traffic, something that IBM Integration Bus would not be used for. So let's say you have a consumer who's just pounding the data center with traffic and it's just going too much. You want to protect Integration Bus, right? So typically what we see is that integration bus and DataPower work very nicely together. We have a lot of great customer stories about that partnership where DataPower can provide all that SOA and API functionality. Integration bus can provide all those great back-end integration and integration flows. Next question, how does this compare with IBM API management solution? Is it complementary? Also built on top of DataPower. So that's a great question, a great point. So IBM API management is a little bit different from what you're seeing over here. So one of the key things about this solution that you're seeing here is that it's built for the DataPower platform. So I would say that's one large difference in the sense that everything that we do in terms of services on DataPower is intended to replicate how you guys use DataPower today, right? So it's not just about APIs and it's not just about a narrower set of functionality. We're actually giving you the full DataPower experience, allowing you to do all the great things that you're doing today, leverage the entire appliance, use things like Webster MQ and mainframe integration, mediation, ESB support, security gateway support, and so on. So that's one key area. Another key area that I would mention is probably around lifecycle management. So that goes back to the top part of the slide. So the ability to actually drive a full SOA and API lifecycle across your services is something that's a little bit different. And probably another thing as well is also, again, focus on convergence. So we talk about both SOA and API here. So you'll be able to continue with all of your internal SOA use cases. You'll also be able to make progress with API in the future as well. So great question. Next question in the WebEx, what version of appliance are we talking about? Do we need API Manager from IBM? Another good question. So this would essentially be the latest release of DataPower. So this would be DataPower 6 going into DataPower 7. And no, you don't need other products. Essentially, the focus is on the DataPower platform. So it's SOA software partnering with DataPower out of box in order to give you all the features that we're talking about. So great question there. Next question, what's the role of Policy Manager when DataPower can provide the SLA and policy management? Another really good question. So remember that in this partnership between SOA Software and DataPower still provides all that runtime capability. What we are offering is a management layer and an automation layer. So if you're already using things today like SLM policy or AAA policy or a variety of MQ features and functions, you're still using all those features and functions. It's just that they're fully managed now. So now you're able to build a model of your SOA and your API infrastructure, and you're able to use very simple terms to do so, and then we're able to deploy that to DataPower and make use of DataPower's features in order to do that, okay? So that's a great question. We don't change DataPower. We don't add sort of new things. We add the API and SOA features and functions that are needed, utilizing DataPower's feature set, but in a fully managed and automated environment. Next question, does DataPower work with ESBs provided by other vendors? So the work with other ESBs is as per DataPower's functionality. So if today you are using DataPower with other ESBs, for example, even integration bus, that is still possible. So we don't change that or limit that. Whatever IBM supports and recommends today for other ESBs, you can support in this picture as well. Next question is that you might have fewer APIs compared to SOA services. So, because I can't quite read the question, consumption will be smaller. So yes, absolutely. Out the gate, if you have smaller API presence than SOA, then it'll be smaller to start with, and it will grow however it will grow. If you have 100 APIs today but 1,000 SOA services, that's fine. If you have 3 APIs and 40 SOA services, that's fine, and that will all grow. The picture you're seeing on the slide here can anticipate any kind of growth in any area. So we scale very nicely across a wide variety of different use cases. You don't need to worry about what you're doing today. Whatever you're doing today, we can support, and whatever you need to do in the future, we can also support. All right, next question. What component in this chart drives enterprise data flow? So another great question. It's always DataPower, right? DataPower is the SOA and API gateway in this picture. It is the one that manages all of your transactions. It's no different than your experience today. So whereas today you use DataPower to accept all kinds of traffic and do all kinds of great work with it, it will continue to do that, and that's why you see DataPower in the center of the slide. Okay. Next question, does it work with both physical and virtual DataPower form factors? Another good question. We absolutely support both. So whether you're working with the DataPower Virtual Edition or with physical appliances, we can support it. We also work with the full range of DataPower models, so X245, X552, XB62, and so on. So we can support your entire DataPower infrastructure. Next question, is DataPower a software as a service? So another good question. In this model you're seeing here, it's not software as a service. It's essentially on-premise. and you're running it in your data center similar to how you're running DataPower today. And last question, finally. SOA Software Component where it can work as a standalone API management solution without DataPower. Great question. We actually do. So our solution set works with a wide variety of different platforms. DataPower is one key platform, but there are different platforms that you can work with. So let's definitely talk later and share with you more information about anything, for example, if you're doing things on a non-IBM platform. So great questions. Glad that we were able to cover all of them. Let's keep the questions coming. But for now, what I'd love to do is to switch over to our demo and actually show you some real working code. And actually, a lot of these questions, not all of them, but a lot of them we're actually going to be able to answer because you're going to see some real working code and real product that's going to help you to understand exactly how things work. So hopefully you can see my screen. You should now see a web application with Policy Manager at the top left, and we're going to be working in a variety of different tabs here for the rest of the demo. We have about a half an hour left, and we have loads to cover. So we are going to go at a brisk pace, but please continue to ask questions to make sure that you walk away with full understanding of everything that you've seen today. So with that, I'd love to introduce Policy Manager. That's exactly what you're looking at over here. This is one of the key components that I showed earlier in the slides. Policy Manager is a runtime register repository. It is built from the ground up to anticipate all the needs of a runtime. So it's very, very smart about real bits and bytes that happen out on the network. It's very smart about security, about monitoring, about network and transports, about SOAP and REST and JSON, all the technical stuff that you need to care about where the rubber meets the road. Policy Manager already knows and cares about. So it's your friend. It's also a great place to have the full community of SOA stakeholders log in and model their services and work with other folks and consume services and so on. And essentially, Policy Manager is broken into an organization tree. You can see that on the top left over here. And within the organization tree, you have a nested series of organizations. You can imagine yourselves breaking this up into your own organizations. Maybe you have a top-level Acme, enterprises, and inside of Acme, you have a legal department and a manufacturing department, an enterprise IT department, and a fulfillment department, whatever it may be. All the different folks that are stakeholders in your SOA will have a home in Policy Manager. And essentially what I want to do today is make believe that the organization that we are today is an organization called SOA Bank. So you can see that over here. So SOA Bank is a multinational, very large financial services organization, and it has a very large IBM infrastructure. It has IBM mainframes and Web3 MQ messaging infrastructure and loads of IBM Web3 application server and IBM integration bus. So it's got a very rich IBM infrastructure. And what its challenge is the IT leaders at SOA Bank worked with the business to realize that one of the top priorities for 2014 is to make sense of all that rich infrastructure, turn it into infrastructure that can produce services very, very easily, but also turn it into an infrastructure that can be very easily consumed. So today what I want to focus on is how can we make SOA Bank successful by first turning their infrastructure into a very well-managed SOA environment, and then how can we also expose that out to a mobile community of app developers and cloud developers and even internal developers and make it very easy? And how can we do that using the DataPower platform? So let me just quickly introduce Policy Manager. So essentially, every organization has a series of different categories where you put objects. You have things like containers, policies, contracts, and services. If we start down with containers, containers is where you're going to store all of your metadata about your DataPower infrastructure. So you can store clusters of DataPower appliances. So here's an example over here. I have a DataPower cluster that's made up of two DataPower appliances, Prod 1 and Prod 2. And inside of each of these nodes, I can put information about things like front-side handlers, HTTP transport, HTTPS transport, Web3 MQ, and so on. And I can make this the home where I can actually deploy services. So containers is the very first key topic for Policy Manager, and it doesn't matter whether you have 10 appliances or 50 or 100, no matter how large your infrastructure, you will find a home here, and you can actually assign DataPower appliances and domains to different organizations. So you can give 3 appliances to the finance department and 2 appliances to the manufacturing department and 10 appliances to the fulfillment, whatever it is that's needed in order for those IT groups to come out with and manage their API and SOA services. So that's the container view. The next view I wanted to show is policies. So as the name implies, policy manager is very good with managing policy. Policy is what affects behaviors on DataPower. So you can define things around security, around monitoring, around mediation, transformation, all sorts of different things you can define using policy, and you can share that policy and you can make it available to a very large audience of DataPower developers who need to come out with those great DataPower services. Today we're going to be working with a particular set of policy. You can see it right here. And I'll go into a little bit more detail over time about exactly what these are and how they work. But policy is a very key, very powerful aspect of our solution. Next category I wanted to show is contracts. Contracts is a way to ensure that you can build a community of providers and consumers and that they have the right relationships with each other. So essentially, a contract will allow a certain part of your user community, your consumer community, to access service operations running on DataPower and running in your back end, and we do it all in a fully automated fashion. Once you define a contract, DataPower will automatically enforce that contract and ensure that only the right folks have the right access. So obviously, security and controlling, who has access to what is very key. We offer that through our contract support, which is fully automated with DataPower. Last piece is services. Services is where this all comes together. And essentially, every service that you need to expose, maybe it's a account balance service, maybe it's a purchase order service, whatever it is, you define it here, and you model it here, and we automatically deploy that service and all of its policy, and all of its contracts, and everything that's needed to make that service work. We deploy it out to the DataPower cluster, and that's exactly what we're going to see today. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good idea about all the different key objects. At least this is enough objects for us to actually get some really good use cases running. With that, let me actually show you what we've put together for SOA Bank to make them successful. What we started with is what we call a physical service. A physical service is a backend, and we're calling this our SOA Bank Services Backend. You could think of this as being a Web3 application server, or maybe a different application server, or maybe a mainframe. Whatever the back end is, this is our physical service that represents it, and it has an address and a place that you can go to, and it enables you to, these are the existing data and applications that make up your business. But the big question is how do we actually produce services that can actually consume your back end? And we do that using a technique called virtualization. And with virtualization, we can actually take something like this SOA Bank backend, and we can virtualize it, and we can deploy it to DataPower. So DataPower is a place where virtual services can run. Those virtual services will do all the important stuff we've been talking about. It will do the security, monitoring, clustering, rate limiting, exposing out to mobile devices, and so on. And we're going to see all of that and more on today's demo. And we did that right over here with this SOA Bank Services _ SOAP. Okay, so essentially I created a virtual service that virtualized my back end, and I deployed it to DataPower, and I used policy and contracts to control the behavior on DataPower. And you can actually see what I've done here. I went to the operational side of my policy, and I was able to attach whatever policy I wanted to. In this case, I put some security policy, so DataPower can have security. I put HTTPS username token security policy. Also put a little bit of mediation, because as it turns out, my backend happens to be a Microsoft-based backend. It's a WCF-based service, and it had a certain number of requirements that DataPower needed to fulfill in terms of setting up the message for success. I also put something called detailed auditing that allowed me to add monitoring to DataPower. And it's very, very easy to attach policy to a service. All I need to do is click on this manage link right here, and that pops up a small wizard that I can use to go and browse all the policy available in Policy Manager, or at least available to me from a security standpoint, and I can actually just check a box to say I want it or I don't want it. Right now, I'm saying I want this auditing orchestration, or I want this username token. It's extremely easy. Also makes it easy to share. I can create a policy once, and I can have an expert do that, and then I can take that policy and attach it to 1 or 5 or 10 or 1,000 DataPower services, and all of those services will automatically get that policy. So policy is a very, very rich, powerful, and scalable way to get all the right behaviors onto your DataPower services. Okay? From a contract standpoint, I also provisioned a contract that I called SOA Bank ASP.NET contract, and I called it ASP.NET because the front-end application that we're going to work with to start with is an ASP.NET application. Now, you didn't have to call it this. You could have called it whatever you wanted to. But if I click in here and take a look at this contract, you can actually see the details. The details say that this contract has a certain contract scope that includes my SOAP service, my DataPower service, right? And it also has a number of different consumer identities. In this case, it's SOA Bank User 1, who can actually access it. It has some more stuff lower down that we won't get into now because we don't have time. but you can see some of the key things that make up a contract. And contracts are all workflow driven, very easy to manage through our full lifecycle process. So you can come out with just the right number of contracts that are needed in order to support your use cases and to let your consumers in. You can also change it over time. Very, very easy. You could have easily added more folks to this contract, or added new contracts, added new services, removed services. All very easy, all done through Policy Manager, and all automatically deployed to DataPower. Okay, so that's my contract, and essentially DataPower is going to make sure that a contract is always available for all transactions that go through DataPower. Okay, so those are some key aspects. The last thing I wanted to show you is where the service is actually deployed to. So I'm going to go back down to my DataPower cluster, and I'm going to click on this tab in the top right here called Hosted Services. Hosted Services shows me all the different services that are deployed to this cluster, and as you can see, indeed, my SOA Bank Services SOAP service is indeed deployed to DataPower, which means that DataPower should be available to start accepting traffic for this particular service. You can see I have some other services here as well. We'll ignore those for the moment and come back, but you can definitely, we're definitely going to go into that in more detail. Okay, so hopefully that paints a nice picture about how you use Policy Manager to make all this work. Everything I've shown you today, I put together in perhaps 10 minutes. Very, very simple. It's all done inside Policy Manager. It's all declarative. You didn't have to understand all the implementation details. We took care of making sure that everything you've defined in your Policy Manager model correctly found its way to DataPower, and DataPower is going to correctly implement everything we've just said. And obviously, this is just a small part of everything we can do. We're actually going to see more functionality over time. Okay? So before we actually go in and start seeing the service work, the last thing I wanted to show you were the operations that make up this service. So because this is SOA Bank, you can imagine the type of operations that SOA Bank wants to expose: deposit, get account balance, get transaction history, and withdraw. These are the main things that the ASP.NET application needs in order to expose to the world. But you can also imagine that these are operations that a lot of folks would want to need. But basically, deposit, get account balance, get transaction history, and withdraw are the key things that DataPower is exposing in this service. And by the way, as the name implies, this is a SOAP service, and this is using WS Security for its security. It's using a username token for its security. Okay? And the last thing I wanted to show is the access point, where it's actually located. You can actually see the detail right over here. It's over HTTPS, and we fully deployed everything to DataPower that's needed, including our X509 certificates that are needed for HTTPS. And you can see where it's located. It's on a host called DPO5, which is one of the DataPower appliances inside of SOA Software. Well, I should say SOA Bank's lab. I guess it's really SOA Software's lab, but DPO5 is our appliance. It's port 14443, and you can see the URL over here. Okay? So it kind of gives you an idea of all the different aspects of this service in order to make it work. With all that said, why don't we actually go and see whether or not this application is available and ready to go? Yeah, was there a question? Okay, so this is the SOA Bank Premier ASP.NET web application. This could be used by internal call center staff. This could be used by SOA Bank customers. This is essentially a front end to that rich back end that SOA Bank needed to expose. And you can see we have the 4 different operations here: get balance, deposit, withdraw, and history. So what I want to do is I want to go to the get balance screen, and I actually want to do some transactions. Let's believe that I am an SOA Bank customer, and I want to start doing some transactions. So we'll start with get balance. And you'll notice that this URL is the same as what we saw in Policy Manager, DPO5 on port 14443. So essentially, this ASP.NET application is going to go hit DataPower, and DataPower is going to process that message and route it to the back end, and then get the result and give it back. And we're going to input an account ID. We're also going to input a SOA Bank user. So I'm going to click on this get balance link, and we're going to see the result. Okay? So we got back an answer. My balance is currently 0, but this is good. This means that we have connectivity to DataPower, and DataPower is receiving the message. What I want to do is actually get some money into this bank. So I'm going to do into my bank account. So I'm going to do a deposit. Why don't we start off with, I don't know, we'll start off with $356.21, and we'll say that I'm depositing this for my paycheck. Okay, and let me click deposit, and there you go. I've just deposited, so that's another transaction with DataPower. Let's also do a withdrawal. Why don't we withdraw $432.56, and let's say this is for my taxes, being tax season here in the U.S., going to the same address as before, same user, and let's withdraw some money. Okay, let's finally do a history. Click get history, and there you have it. Paycheck, my taxes, And if I go back to get balance, I should now have a nice balance. Actually, negative balance. That's what the taxman does to you. So we have a negative balance now, but essentially we have a bunch of transactions going through. And what we want to ask is what kind of features do we have available now that we have this DataPower service fully working? First thing I want to do is just quickly point out where this DataPower service is running. I'm going to switch over to my DataPower admin console, and I'm going to, you can see we're on DPO5 over here, same address. If I click on my web service proxy, I can actually see the different web service proxies that are deployed, and we should see my service, and indeed we do. This is literally the service that we just hit by the ASP.NET application to do its thing. And the big question is what things can it do? Well, let's go back to Policy Manager, and let's go to the Monitoring tab. And first thing I'm going to do is go to something called Real-Time Charts. And I'm going to take a look at what's available to me. You can see I'm getting some data for my real-time charts based upon these transactions. So the first thing we're doing is we're monitoring this service. And we're showing you exactly what type of traffic is flowing through DataPower. Something else that we're doing is we're actually capturing real live transaction logs. And you can see here that just from a couple of minutes ago, we were actually driving real traffic through, deposit, withdrawal, get transaction history, and balance. And if I double click on any of these, I can actually see all the details. Okay? And I can see things like which user went through DataPower, where did it come into, where did it go to, what was its message size. This is all being sourced dynamically and live from DataPower. If I go to my recorded messages, I can actually see my live DataPower messages, and you can see things like the security header, and you can see in the response things like my transaction history. So this is great. We're getting full monitoring of our DataPower services. Let's also talk a little bit about security. If I go back to my application and I use user2, and I send the transaction through, you should see that it will fail. So DataPower doesn't like user2, cannot authenticate user2, so that piece is not going to work. So essentially the security is working, and of course contract is working as well. If you don't have the right contract, that will not work either. If I go back to my service and I look at my contract view, I can actually point out that I have user1 and user2. So actually, even if DataPower can authenticate user2, it will fail because contract authorization will fail. Let me just quickly show that to you. Go back to my monitoring tab and go to my alerts. I think I can see it over here. If you can see now it's rejected, if I double click and look at details, you can see here that it's giving a AAA authorization failure. This is because the contract authorization is failing. Okay, so we have full security in this use case. Okay, so far so good. We're doing very well. This was all fully automated. We deployed this service to DataPower, and we have all these great benefits in terms of security and monitoring and all the policy that we've attached to the service. Why don't we keep going and ask a different question for a moment? Let's ask, what if we had to do other integration with the larger SOA bank infrastructure? What if, for example, we needed to do Web3MQ? And why don't we say that the SOA bank has a requirement that all withdrawals get monitored, because withdrawals are very important because that shows money flows coming out of SOA bank. What if we needed to monitor all of those? And what if that needed to attach to an existing sophisticated Web3MQ environment that received all those using asynchronous messaging? Answer, no problem. We can absolutely automate that for SOA bank. Let me show you how we can do that. If I go to my cluster of DataPower appliances, you can see that I have a new listener here. It's a Web3MQ listener, so Policy Manager supports Web3MQ out of box, as does DataPower. So you can easily build Web3MQ solutions on top of this platform. Let me quickly show you how we were able to implement this for the bank. We went down to the operation level, and remember, it was only withdrawals that we needed to audit. So we went in there, and we chose the withdrawal operation. And in there, we decided to add an orchestration. So we support orchestration out of box for ESB-type functionality. The orchestration is fairly simple, but you can see exactly what it's doing over here. It receives the message, and then it puts the message on a Web3MQ queue before it actually calls the backend. Okay, so essentially all the different withdrawals are going to go through this orchestration and going to result on puts to Web3MQ. But that's not quite the end. What we also did is we created another service that we deployed to DataPower, which is this auditing processor service. And this auditing processing service is going to take that withdrawal message off of the queue, and it's going to monitor it, and it's going to drive it to a final queue that's going to do that final work. Okay, so essentially our core service that we've been exposing to ASP.NET has an orchestration that's going to put withdrawal messages onto a queue, and then another DataPower service is going to take it off the queue, do some interesting monitoring, and then put it on a final queue. Okay? All done through Policy Manager, all fully modeled using the tool set here. Let's actually see this in action. So what I want to do is I want to go back, and I want to go to my withdrawal. Okay? And let's do something else here for my withdrawal. Let's do $245.54, and let's say more taxes, and will this be WMQ audited? Okay? So let's put this withdrawal through. Okay, and the withdrawal went through. If we check our history, we should actually be able to see, there it is, more taxes, and will this be WMQ audited? But let's ask ourselves if the orchestration actually worked. If I go back to my processor and I go to my monitoring tab, okay, I can actually see that it is picking up messages from MQ and processing them. And if I actually go, and you can see obviously it's always withdraw, okay? And if I actually go inside and look at this, I can actually see where the message came from, which you can recognize as an MQ URL that's going to a queue manager on DataPower, and you can see where it's going to, another queue. So essentially it's the audit intermediate queue going to the audit final queue, okay? And we've decided to audit these messages here as well, so you can actually see the message, more taxes, will this be MQ audited? And let's also check our MQ infrastructure to see if MQ was able to actually put this through as well. So I'm going to switch over to my MQ Explorer running on my MQ server, and I should be able to go to my final queue. Let me go and browse messages. Okay, and you can see I have a message from just a couple of minutes ago. Okay, so if I go in, I'm sorry, right over here. If I go in here and I view the content and actually look at the payload of this MQ final destination, you can actually see that this is the message that came through. So more taxes, will this WMQ be audited? Okay, so we're able to implement a full MQ solution using the tool set and using DataPower. So it's very, very exciting in terms of integrating with an MQ environment. Okay, so let's keep going with that. One last thing I wanted to show, and then we're going to switch gears onto API. What I wanted to show here is a last piece around being able to do some customized work. So supposing that, I mean, everything we've seen so far is all out of box. You'll be able to implement everything we've seen using the full power of the SOA software suite and DataPower. What if you guys needed to do your own sophisticated things on the DataPower platform? We offer a very, very powerful feature called custom policy. It allows you to extend DataPower in any way you like, but to still do it in a fully automated fashion. If I go to my policy section, I'll show you a new policy here called my SOA Bank Withdrawal Alerting Policy. Okay, and in this policy, this is again all custom, and essentially it's related to withdrawals, just like the MQ solution. The bank said that anytime any withdrawal is made for $500 or more, they want that audited because they want alerts raised for certain types of money flows coming out of the bank, and they want this message to happen: a withdrawal has gone above the threshold. So in order to implement this, again, this is fully custom. This is not out of box. This is very special to SOA Bank. We were able to implement this using Policy Manager's full policy management tools, and we were able to deploy the right implementation on DataPower so that DataPower could correctly do that. In order to make this work, all we had to do is attach this policy to our service. So let me quickly go back to the Operations tab. And again, we're going to go back to Withdrawal because that's where the key piece is. And once again, I have my alerting policy attached. And again, only for this operation. So why don't we try this out? Again, the alerting policy says that anything over $500 should result in an alert and should have this message over here. So let me quickly go back to ASP.NET and do another withdrawal. And why don't we do $501.54, and why don't we say this is for my vacation? Okay, and let's send this across. And there you go, $501, and you can see it in the history as well. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. Okay, so, I'm sorry, doing pretty good down here. But did DataPower enforce this policy and drive an alert? Why don't we go find out? I'm going to go back to my service. I'm going to go back to monitoring. And I'm going to go to my alerts now. This is all fully integrated. I'm going to double-click on my top alert. Okay? And there you go. A withdrawal has gone above the threshold. The withdrawal was $501. The threshold was $500. Okay? So we were able to offer the bank a fully automated but fully custom solution as well for their very specific needs around things like withdrawal alerting. But you can imagine the sky is the limit here. You can implement any type of solution you want. Okay? One last thing I wanted to show here is I wanted to show the actual modification of this policy and show you how easy it is to change something in order that you can see an effect on DataPower. Let's say we want to change the message and change it to, let's say too much, there you go, that's good. Too much money is flowing out of the bank. Probably not the best message, but we'll do it just to show a change. And let's change the withdrawal amount. Let's make this $1,500, okay? So I'm going to change my policy. I'm going to click Apply, okay? And what I wanted to demonstrate here is how easy it is once you change policy for DataPower to be updated with that new policy. And we do that through deployment. So you didn't get a chance to see deployments earlier, so I wanted to quickly show that now. We can switch over to another view that actually can show us the things that are going on inside of DataPower. Essentially, this screen here is an administration screen that shows you all the deployments that we're making to DataPower to make this whole SOA and API program actually work. And you can see here that because we made a change to policy, we have two services that are requesting deployment to DataPower. We're not actually deploying because we have full control. We're actually saying don't deploy now, stopped, but we can deploy it if we want to, and we have a full cluster here, both our first DataPower appliance and our second, and you can see that they're both automatically waiting for this update because we made a change to that policy. So let's say that we're ready, and all I want to do is I want to start my queue for my first appliance and start my queue on my second appliance, and that should start the deployment to DataPower with this new policy. So you can see that we're in the middle of deploying now, first to the first appliance, and then we are now deploying to the second. Let's give that a moment to complete. And you can see, by the way, that it's deploying two. We didn't talk about the API yet. We're going to talk about that in just a second. The reason why it's deploying two is because two services, an API and an internal service, both rely on this policy, so it needs to deploy both of these together, okay? So let's just give that a bit for it to deploy to DataPower. And essentially, this screen is used to control all of those critical deployments that you have control as to exactly when they happen. So you can see that our first API was deployed, took about 35 seconds. Let's give it just a bit for the second one to be deployed. If we switch over to our second appliance, you can see it's also finished the first one and is starting on the second one. You can also see, by the way, there's a full history of everything that's been deployed in the past, so you have a nice way to understand exactly what's running on DataPower, okay? Let's just let this one finish, and you can see it's now done, okay? Now that it's done, I should be able to hit DataPower with the very same ASP.NET app, and I should see the new policy enforced. Let me go back and see. Let's do a withdrawal again. And let's make, again, this has to be over 1,500, so let's make this 1,601 and 56 cents, and let's say this is more taxes, okay? And I go through my withdrawal, and there you go, 1,601. I go to my history, and I can see my history down here, more taxes, 1,601. Let's see if DataPower is enforcing the new policy. I go back to my Service and Policy Manager, click on Alerts, click on my top alert here, and there you go. Too much money is flowing out of the bank, 1,601 versus 1,500. So what I wanted to demonstrate here is you're going to gain a lot of agility across your entire DataPower infrastructure. No matter how many APIs and SOA services you have, we make it very easy for you to make whatever changes you need to make, even if it's very custom to your environment, okay? One last thing I wanted to show, and then we'll move on, is the cluster feature. I've been showing you clusters all over the place here. I've shown you clusters down at the container view. I showed you clustering down at the deployment view where we had two different here. Let me just actually show you the cluster running. This whole time we've been going to 14.443, but our second DataPower appliance is on 15.443. Let's just see that this second cluster is still working. I do a get history, or I can do a get balance. Okay, and there you have it. Okay, so the full cluster is working, and they're working identically. Everything we've put in, the custom policy, the HTTPS, any kind of mediation, transformation, orchestration, so on, is all working seamlessly across the entire cluster. It doesn't matter how big the cluster is. Two appliances here, you could have 4, 8, 12, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so clustering is a very important concept here, and we make it easy. Okay, so with that, what I wanted to do is switch gears. I know that we're running a bit late. We're basically at the top of the hour. If you need to drop off, then please do, but if you can stay, really appreciate a little bit of extra time. I would say in another 5 to 10 minutes, we'll be able to cover the other side of the coin, from Convergence, the API. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about that, and then close for Q&A. So definitely appreciate your patience here, but if you do need to drop off, then we definitely understand, okay? So the last piece I wanted to show is around API and Convergence. So far, everything we've been talking about is really all about the production side if you think about it. We're taking a complex MQ infrastructure, Microsoft infrastructure, could be integration bus infrastructure, and we're using things like security and policy and orchestration, mediation, transformation, and so on in order to make that a very nice service-oriented architecture. You can imagine that you would have many services here, not just my SOAP service and my MQ service, but all kinds of services, all very neatly represented. The big question now, and this is the whole point of Convergence, is how do you also make progress on the API side of the coin? How do you build a developer community? How do you expose REST services as APIs? How do you work with OAuth and basic auth and all the things that are needed in the new mobile world, the new mobile revolution, the cloud world, all those important facts? How do you market and make available and have clear business performance goals for the exposure of your data to a very large community? And the answer is you do that with DataPower in the very same way that you're doing it here, utilizing SOA software. And with that, I want to introduce a second tool, which is our Community Manager Developer Portal, which is the view that you're looking at right here. The Developer Portal is built on top of our full tool set. So it's not a separate application. Everything about it works with everything that we've talked about so far, and it's actually intrinsic to everything we've talked about so far. So all the definitions of everything you've done, all the policy, the security, all the life cycle, all the deployments, it's all fully enabled through Community Manager as well. Let me actually show you how this works, and to kind of prove that, I'm going to switch to a different part of my organization tree, and inside of that, I'm going to show you how we can deploy an API to DataPower using a very similar tool set, but within a very rich API environment. The API we're going to look at is right here, SOA Bank Services API. As you can see over here, it has the same operations, deposit, get balance, transaction history, and withdraw, but it's a bit different. This is a fully REST-enabled service. This is using basic auth, and this is using all the built-in features of Community Manager. Let me actually show you that. If I switch over to our Community Manager tool and click on the API icon, you can see it's right here. So this very same API that we just saw here in Policy Manager, and that we can model using all the sophisticated stuff we took a look at, MQ, and all the different types of security and the custom policy and so on, is now available here so that a mobile community, a app community, an API developer community can all work together and be successful. And we're actually managing in Community Manager both APIs and apps. So let me first click on the API. When I click on the API, you can see a lot of different things that you can do here. You can definitely do monitoring, similar to what we saw earlier, but you also have things like message boards. You also have documentation. You also have legal. If I look at, for example, documentation, we're automatically allowing you to document all the different operations and how do you use them so that you can make it very nice and easy for a large community. So you can see here things like the withdraw, deposit, history, and balance. Okay, and you can even modify this, and I can add new content here on the fly. So you can do lots of interesting things in terms of documentation. Also, we're going to help to manage the full app environments. When I click on apps over here, I can see all the different apps that want to consume this. Because one of the key use cases of Community Manager is to open up your enterprise data to a very large community of folks who can browse all of your data that's running on DataPower and running in your IBM backend and can actually start consuming it. This SOA Bank mobile app is an example of one such consumer, one such app, where an app developer said, I really love those SOA Bank APIs, I want to use them. And through all automated functionality, we were able to grant access, and we were able to tell DataPower to automatically let any SOA Bank mobile app user access DataPower, whereas other apps do not have that access, okay? And you can see that inside of this app, if I click on it, there are a variety of things that this app can do. And so essentially, Community Manager is helping two different types of users. It's helping app developers build their apps against APIs, and it's helping API developers market and make available everything that's needed in order to drive the consumption side of the equation. But remember, all of this is on DataPower. All of this is utilizing DataPower's full feature set, okay? So with all that in place, why don't we actually see this API in action? So to do that, I'm going to switch gears. We're not going to use the ASP.NET app. We're actually going to use a mobile app because that's pretty fitting for an API-based scenario. So you can see over here, this is my mobile app. This is an emulator. And I actually have this app running in Community Manager inside of my mobile device. So I'm going to go and actually use this. So we're calling it the SOA Bank phone app. Okay. It's going to ask me to log in. I'm going to put the very same account number that I put in ASP.NET application, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And why don't we log in? And everything that we're doing here, again, is against DataPower, the very same DataPower appliance that we were working with earlier. Why don't we start off with the get balance request? And you can see we're already getting our data back. Why don't we go to our transaction history and see if we can see a similar transaction history as before? And there you go. More taxes, my vacation, will this be MQ audited, taxes for my paycheck. So this is not the same service as the ASP.NET. It's a virtual service that has different behavior because it's suited for an API world, but it's going against the very same backend, and it's doing the very same great stuff that we did before. And indeed, it's even doing the withdrawal monitoring that we talked about. Let me just quickly show this to you. When I click on withdrawal, you can see that it has the alerting policy. So what that means is that if I actually go in to my app and I do a withdrawal over $1,500, I should hopefully see an alert. So let's actually do a withdrawal. And let's say this amount is for $3,563, let's say. And let's say this is even more taxes. A lot of taxes this tax season. That should make this quick. Even taxes. So let's withdraw this very large amount, and let's see if DataPower is able to correctly do that. So go back to transaction history. There you go. Even taxes for $35.63. Let's go back to DataPower, and let's go to our container view and look at our alerts. I go to monitoring, and I go to details, and go to monitoring. Okay. And there you go. Too much money is flowing out, $35.63, $1,500. This is one of my favorite use cases because it's showing you that whether it's a mobile app consuming SOA Bank's infrastructure or an internal app, it's the exact same policy, exact same DataPower appliance, exact same behavior. This is extremely powerful. This allows you to have a single unified solution that can handle all your needs, whether it's API or SOA-based services. Let me just show you something else inside of Community Manager. If I go back to my API, and I look at the monitoring section, I can actually see this monitoring functionality flowing through. I get a nice breakdown of the different operations, get transaction history, deposit, withdrawal, and so on. I can even see full logs of stuff coming through DataPower. If I go to the top one, you can see under info that this is my get transaction history. That was the last piece. You can see the flow here. You can see the URL, which is a REST-based URL for transaction history, a little bit different than SOAP. If you look at the response, for example, you can even see the body, right? Same thing. All of this is being driven. By the way, this service is also doing full REST to SOAP mediation because it's the same backend, remember, same WCF backend using SOAP. So we have full mediation in place to make all of this work. So we have a very nice story for REST-based services, okay? So the idea here is, we don't have time to cover all the features of Community Manager, but the idea here is that you'll be able to use full API management functionality over the same DataPower infrastructure, same backend infrastructure that you're already using today, and you can leverage all the power of DataPower, okay? So hopefully that gives you an idea, and hopefully that's a very relevant use case for you. I'm sure that you have a lot of existing infrastructure you're already exposing, but you'd like to further manage it. You'd also like to further make it available to an API world, but you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't want new gateways. You don't want new types of policies or applications or runtime infrastructures. You want a single unified solution for everything that you need to do. So hopefully this is a very convincing, very compelling solution. It's going to give you everything that you need to do, and hopefully this makes sense in terms of that earlier slide we showed where DataPower is in the center of all of this, giving you everything that you need, whether it's lifecycle management, whether it's SOA, whether it's API, whether it's consumption or production. Everything that you need to solve all your problems can be answered in a single unified solution. So we are a bit over, and I promised to make sure we had some time for Q&A. So I think the best thing to do here is to close out the discussion with Q&A and thoughts, and then we'll take things from there. So with that, any thoughts or questions?
There are some questions in the chat box.
There sure are. Let me go to the chat box, and we're going to cycle through the different questions. Wow, a lot of questions. Just give me a moment here to get to the top. Okay, here we go. So first question is there a way to place services in different categories to navigate large number of services? Great question. These are really good questions, by the way. Thank you, everyone, for being so alert here with all these great questions. So a way to place services in different categories, absolutely. In 1 hour, we can't really show everything that we do, but we do a huge amount across both the SOA and API landscape. We have very sophisticated tools for categorization and tagging and ownership and putting services in the right organization. We're extremely scalable. It doesn't really matter how many services you have. You could have 50, 500, 10,000. We have ways to manage that. We have customers managing extremely large numbers of services across a very large DataPower infrastructure, so we can absolutely help you with all the right tools to make that work. Okay, so really, really good question. Next question, I probably missed it. So DataPower is an on-premise, within the firewall, efficient manager and integrator of API and SOA. So I guess that's more of a summary. So yes, the answer is yes. DataPower is going to be the centerpiece of your API and SOA solution, but it's going to be fully managed, fully automated in a full lifecycle environment where all your stakeholders can participate, all in a very, very nice, very comprehensive tool set. So yes, absolutely, DataPower is on-premise, and it is the centerpiece for your API and SOA functionality. Next piece is, would you share links in IBM.com for us to learn more? Please do share answers, other questions, and so on. So definitely, I'm going to give a slide on places you can visit on SOA.com, where you can definitely learn more about the different aspects of SOA.com with some great links as well. Next question, can you limit the number of requests that are forwarded to backend services at a time while queuing exceedant requests? Answer is absolutely. DataPower has very, very rich support for that, using things like service level monitoring support, and we fully automate that. So you can take a service and you can say it can only utilize 100 transactions per second. Anything more than that, DataPower will automatically start shaping that traffic and limiting who can actually do it. So we have very nice support for that. DataPower has very nice support for that. We could even target it down to an operation level. You can have different levels of rate limiting for different operations. So very, very powerful. Okay. Next question, way to place different services and categories for a large number of services. I think we addressed that already. Next one is API management support and SOA software available from some specific version of SOA software policy manager. So, I mean, typically it's the latest version of policy manager. We'll support earlier versions as well. But essentially, its support is for our core policy manager offering. So good question there. Next question, I presume the policy manager functionality is available both with embedded and standalone management points. That's a really good question. That question is around something we didn't discuss. We offer support for management of not just DataPower, but the answer is yes. No matter where your API and SOA services are running, we're going to be able to help you to ensure that you have full management across your infrastructure. And so we have really nice support for IBM, support for Microsoft and other platforms, so we can definitely help you throughout your entire environment. Okay. Next question, how do I ensure last mile security, considering embedded MP cannot be installed? Another great question. So last mile security is a topic of how do we make sure that wherever DataPower forwards messages to in the back end, that guy is fully secured. So a lot of different techniques. Why don't you contact us and we can go into a deeper conversation about that. You could put management points in your back end. You could also do things like SSL and other types of security. So there are different ways of doing that, and we can definitely chat more about that offline. Next question, how much of it is configuration as opposed to coding when using API management? Love that question. Favorite question of the day, I think, because the answer is really nice. There's no coding. Everything that you've seen here is fully out of box, with the exception of the custom policy, because obviously custom policy is custom, and even that can be done without coding, but it can be done with like XSLT and so on. So great question. This is not a large-scale integration or coding effort. Everything you see today and more into the future is all fully enabled without code using simple modeling inside of our tool set. So really, really good question. That's a very important takeaway. This is all out of box. This is not something that's going to take you 6 months to put together. You're going to put this together very, very quickly using out-of-box tooling. Okay. Next question, is there a trial version of the software? What I would say is contact us. I'll have a contact slide in just a second, and we'll share with you more about how you can get involved and start looking at the technology. Next question, does PM for DataPower automate or manage DataPower SSL profile? Another really good question. It's a simple answer across the board. We automate everything. So everything you've seen today, from SSL and X509 to WS security to contract authorization to authentication to transformation, everything you've seen today is fully automated. You don't have to go and provision these things on your own on DataPower. We make sure that all that gets to where it needs to go across an entire cluster. So really, really good question. That's, again, the key pillar of our approach to DataPower is full automation of everything, API and SOA. It doesn't matter if it's MQ, Web3 application server, Doesn't matter how large and rich your environment is, we're going to automate it all for you. So really, really good question. Okay. Next one is, would it be SOA software-specific product built on top of IBM DataPower? Is it just all IBM DataPower? So the runtime, the actual gateway, is full DataPower. Same great DataPower you know today. The management tooling that's making all this happen in terms of the API and the SOA and the monitoring and the community, the developer portal, that's provided by SOA software. So essentially, this solution is a partnership between IBM and SOA software that's making all these different things working. Next question, are you deploying to instances versus deploying to cluster? So again, it's across the entire cluster. If you have 2 DataPower nodes in your cluster, we deploy to 2. If it's 4, it goes to 4. We make sure that whatever your cluster environment looks like, we will fully deploy to that cluster very, very quickly in as little as 15 seconds per service. Next question is, will you publish a recording of the presentation? The answer is absolutely. We'll make this available for you guys. Next question is, are you deploying to instances versus to a cluster? To a cluster. Remember, when we saw that admin screen, we deployed the changes to that auditing policy to both nodes, not just one. So we're fully cluster aware on DataPower. Doesn't matter how big your cluster is, fully integrated with clustering and automated. Next question, does SOA software have an embedded MQ client? Good question. The answer is we make use of DataPower's MQ feature and functionality. So it's DataPower's rich MQ support that is being used and is what you saw live here today in terms of MQ integration. Okay. Next question, can we change the UI of Community Manager? That's a great question. Absolutely. What I showed you is just an out-of-box. SOA Bank would really have a fully branded experience and environment. I didn't show that today, but in your case, you can imagine that it is fully branded and you can add even new types of screens and so on. So Community Manager is extremely flexible to make sure that your community and your portal is very, very nicely branded and targeted to the community that you're trying to target. So really, really nice question. Next question, where are monitoring logs stored and for how long? Great question. It's stored in a relational database such as Oracle or SQL Server, which means that you have full access to it and you can actually do as you need. In terms of how long is it stored, again, that's up to your DBAs. If you guys have a policy that you need to move them off every day, it's every day. If it's every 6 months, it's 6 months. If you want to warehouse those usage data, you can do that as well. So because it's standard relational technology, you can do what you will with your DBAs to make sure you have the right solution for the storage of important data that you have. Next question, how do we separate corporate administrator tasks and department-level admins, policy-level deployments? Another great question. Policy Manager and our tooling is fully secured in a very rich user model that lets you break down your SOA into different responsibilities. Different users will be able to use different things. We support all sorts of different types of roles, trading partner roles and end user roles and mobile app developer roles and internal administrators versus business managers. We support the entire spectrum of different user types, and we let you delegate administration. So you can actually come out with a finance department and have a finance IT lead and say that finance IT lead has ownership over the finance IT department. They're the ones that have control over what services get created, where they get deployed to, in which DataPower infrastructure, and so on. So yes, you have full control over the entire process, the full life cycle of services, and who does what across all of our tool sets. Okay. Last question here. What is the support for EDI transactions with the solution? Great question. Again, we're using DataPower here as our gateway, so you're going to utilize DataPower's capabilities. So if you're using XB62, you have a very rich solution set there. If you're using XI52, you'll be able to use some features on the XI52. So again, it's very key that we don't change the DataPower functionality. It's the same great functionality you utilize. We only automate it and enhance it and make it available in a full API and SOA environment. So in terms of strategic planning and architecture and thinking about all you need to do in the future, the way to think about it is simple. If DataPower can do it, we can help you to make that a reality in a very rich lifecycle-driven environment such as what I've been showing here today. So really good question about EDI transactions. Okay, a lot of really, really good questions. Other thoughts and questions before we close? And you can chat in the window, or you can on the phone live. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, so I think we're done. So the final slide you see here has some contact us information. So you can reach out to me personally if you wish, simon.barrere@soa.com. Also, please do visit us at www.soa.com/IBM to learn more about our DataPower and IBM solutions. We also have some great white papers and data sheets. I shared some of that earlier that you definitely want to take a look at and download. So we have a lot of great stuff. Please do visit us. Please do reach out, and let's keep the conversation going. But that's pretty much what we wanted to share today. So we went a bit over. We do apologize for that, but we did have a lot of content. We thank you very much for all your time. We hope that this was very compelling. We hope that this helped you to think about what convergence is and what it means and what your next steps are in terms of ensuring convergence in your environment. We hope that the demo gave you a good idea of what it's like to use DataPower as a centerpiece of API and SOA convergence into the future, and how SOA software can partner with you to offer a great, fully automated solution across all of your most challenging needs. So with that, I think we will close. Thank you, everyone, for all of your time. Let's keep the conversation going, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 2,